The October wind sliced through my coat as I stood outside Claire's house in Philadelphia, clutching a canvas wrapped in brown paper. My fingers ached from the cold, but I barely noticed. I'd spent weeks painting this for Lily's 6th birthday, a watercolor of her favorite park, with swings and a bright red slide, every stroke a labor of love. I could already picture her eyes lighting up, her little voice calling me, Grandma Artist. But now, standing on their stoop, I felt like a stranger. I'd rung the bell 3 times. No answer. My calls to Claire went straight to voicemail. And Ethan, her husband, didn't pick up either. Last night, Claire had texted me, saying she was flying to Chicago for a marketing conference. "It's a big deal, Mom," she'd written. "I'll be gone all week." I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? So I'd planned to surprise Lily with the painting, thinking Ethan would be home with her. But the house was silent, the windows dark, the wind stung my cheeks as I dialed Claire again, my scarf flapping loose. This time, she answered, her voice sharp, like I'd interrupted something. "Mom, I told you I'm not in Philly. I'm in Chicago. Can you please not bother Ethan? And Lily right now?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just wanted to drop off Lily's gift," I said. "Where's Ethan? Is he with her?" A pause, long enough to make my stomach twist. "He's busy, Mom. Look, it's just a birthday. You don't need to make a fuss." Then the line went dead. I stood there, the canvas heavy in my hands, my breath fogging in the air. Just a birthday? Lily wasn't just my granddaughter, she was my heart, the child I'd rocked to sleep, the one who'd smeared paint on my apron and giggled. And now I was being told I was bothering them. I tightened my grip, the paper crinkling, and called Ethan one last time. Voicemail again. Something wasn't right. Claire's voice had sounded too clipped, too rehearsed. I was about to turn away when my phone buzzed. It was Dorothy, our neighbor down the street, whose grandson went to Lily's school. "Margaret, you okay?" she asked, her voice warm but cautious. "I saw you at Claire's gate earlier." I forced a smile, though she couldn't see it. "I'm fine, just dropping off a gift for Lily. But no one's home. Claire's in Chicago, and Ethan's not answering." There was a pause, the kind that makes your heart race. Then Dorothy's voice softened, like she was bracing me. "Oh, Margaret. Claire's not in Chicago. I saw her at the school this afternoon, picking Lily up." The world went quiet. The wind, the cars, the ache in my hands, all of it faded. Claire had lied to me. She wasn't on a work trip. She'd been right here, in Philly, and still, she'd locked me out of Lily's birthday. The canvas felt like a weight pulling me down. I'd been standing here, freezing, waiting like a fool, while my own daughter shut me out. Why? What had I done to become so unwanted? My name is Margaret Sullivan, and I'm 62 years old. For over 3 decades, I worked as a nurse in Philadelphia's busiest hospitals, stitching wounds, holding hands, and staying late through countless night shifts. I retired 4 years ago, moving into a cramped subsidized apartment with just enough room for a bed and a small easel. But that day, standing outside Claire's house with Lily's painting still in my hands, I wasn't thinking about my career or my tiny home. I was thinking about how I'd ended up here, feeling like an outsider in my own daughter's life. I raised Claire alone after her father died in a car accident when she was 5. He was a quiet man, a carpenter who loved jazz and built us a life from sawdust and dreams. When he was gone, it was just me and Claire, navigating a world that felt too big for the 2 of us. I worked double shifts to pay for her school supplies, her soccer cleats, her college applications. Every paycheck was stretched thin, but I never let her see me worry. I wanted her to feel safe, to know she was enough. When Claire met Ethan and got married, I was overjoyed. She was 26, glowing in her white dress, and Ethan seemed steady, a banker with a firm handshake and big plans. They took his last name, Walsh, and I didn't mind. It felt like a new chapter for her. A year later, when they were struggling with a mortgage and a new baby, I made a choice. I gave them the land my father had left me, a sprawling plot on the outskirts of Philly, where I'd once dreamed of building a little retreat with a garden and a porch swing. It was the last piece of him I had, but I handed it over, free and clear, so Claire and Ethan could breathe easier. I moved into my apartment, telling myself it was worth it if it helped my family. At first, Claire was grateful. She'd call to chat about Lily, send me photos of her first steps. But over time, things changed. Ethan started to stiffen when I came by, his smiles tight, like I was intruding. Claire grew distant, her calls shorter, her excuses sharper. When I offered to watch Lily so they could have a night out, Ethan said they'd hired a sitter. When I brought over a pot of my chicken stew, Claire smiled thinly and said it was too heavy for their diet. I'm not one to push, so I stepped back. No more unannounced visits, just cards and gifts for holidays. But the chill in their voices wasn't subtle. It felt like I'd become a guest they hadn't invited. Last year, when I was in the hospital with pneumonia, Claire called once, her voice clipped, promising to visit. She never did. Ethan didn't either. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, telling myself they were busy, that Lily needed them more. But it hurt, a deep ache that lingered. Still, I kept hoping. For Lily's birthday, I'd reminded Claire a week earlier, asking if we could celebrate together. Of course, Mom, she'd said. You're so sweet with her. And now, here I was, frozen out, lied to, the painting in my hands feeling heavier with every gust of wind. As I walked home, my mind churned. Had I been too much? Too involved? Or was it something else, something colder, that made Claire shut that door and leave me standing in the dark? The walk home from Claire's house felt endless, the October wind biting harder with every step. Lily's painting was tucked under my arm, its edges creased from my grip. My mind spun, replaying Claire's lie, Dorothy's words, the silence. Behind that locked door. I'd always told myself Claire was just busy, that Ethan's coldness was just his way. But standing outside their house, unwanted, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Something was wrong, deeper than a missed birthday. Back in my apartment, I set the painting against the wall and sank into my chair, the radiator humming softly. My phone sat on the table, tempting me to call Claire again, to demand answers. Instead, I dialed Dorothy. Her voice was gentle, like she knew I was fragile. Margaret, you holding up? I tried to sound calm. I'm okay. Just confused. Did Claire say anything at the school? About why she didn't tell me she was in town? Dorothy hesitated, then sighed. It's not just that, Margaret. I heard from a friend at the real estate office. Claire and Ethan listed your land for sale. The one you gave them. It's already on the market. My heart stopped. The land, my father's land, the one he'd bought with every penny he'd saved, dreaming of a place for our family to gather. I'd given it to Claire and Ethan to ease their burdens, thinking it would be their future, Lily's future. And now they were selling it, without a word to me? I thanked Dorothy, my voice hollow, and hung up. My hands trembled as I opened my laptop and searched the county property records. There it was, the plot, listed with a broker, no mention of me, no trace of the love it held. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. My father's voice, rough but warm, telling me about the old oak tree on that land. There's something special under it, Maggie, he'd said. A box, for you and your kids someday. Don't let it go. I'd never dug it up, too afraid of stirring old grief. But now, the thought of that box, his letters, maybe, or something more, being lost to a stranger's bulldozer lit a fire in me. They weren't just selling land. They were erasing my family's story. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened my bank app and canceled the monthly transfers I'd been sending Claire. For years, I'd dipped into my savings to help with their debts, believing their excuses about tight budgets. No more. The next morning, I walked to the county records office, my coat buttoned against the chill. The clerk confirmed the listing, and I left with a printed copy, its black ink feeling like a betrayal in my hands. By noon, I was at the community legal aid office, a small room tucked inside the public library. Nora, a retired lawyer with kind eyes and a no-nonsense braid, greeted me. I handed her the gift agreement I'd signed when I gave Claire the land. She skimmed it, her pen pausing over a single line. Here, she said, tapping the page. It says any sale requires your written consent. They didn't get it, did they? I shook my head, my throat tight. Then we can stop this, Nora said. An emergency injunction will freeze the sale until a judge reviews it. I nodded, my pulse racing. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of power, not just pain. This wasn't about money or spite. It was about protecting what mattered, my father's legacy, my dignity, the piece of me I'd given away too easily. As I signed the paperwork, I realized I'd let Claire and Ethan treat me like a shadow for too long. No more standing in the cold, waiting for a door that wouldn't open. A week after I filed the injunction, my doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole and saw Claire and Ethan standing in the hallway of my apartment building, their faces tight. My heart thudded, but I opened the door, stepping aside to let them in. The air felt heavy as they sat on my small sofa, the space barely big enough for us. I stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, waiting. I wasn't going to speak first. Claire broke the silence, her voice sharp but unsteady. Mom, we got the court notice. You froze the land sale. Why would you do this? I looked at her, my daughter, the girl I'd raised through fevers and heartbreaks, now staring at me like I was the enemy. Ethan shifted beside her, his jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. I set my tea mug down, deliberate and slow. You tell me, Claire. You and Ethan listed my father's land for sale without a single word to me. You lied about being in Chicago to keep me away from Lily's birthday. Does that sound like respect to you? Claire's eyes flickered, but she leaned forward, defensive. We were doing it for Lily, Mom. The market's good right now. Selling the land would pay for her school, her future. You always said you wanted to help us. Her words stung, twisting my love into an obligation. I took a breath, keeping my voice even. I gave you that land to build a life, not to cash it in behind my back. I've helped you for years, money. For your debts, time with Lily, stepping back when you asked. And you repay me by shutting me out and selling what's left of my family? Ethan finally spoke, his tone smooth, like he was closing a deal. Margaret, you signed the land over. Legally, it's ours. You can't just change your mind now. I met his gaze, unflinching. Legally, Ethan, that agreement says any sale needs my consent. You both knew that and thought I'd stay quiet, didn't you? That I'd just fade away because I'm old and don't matter. His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, he looked caught. Claire's face softened, just a fraction, but she pressed on. Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things are tight, Ethan's loans, Lily's tuition. We thought you'd understand. I gave a bitter laugh, the sound surprising even me. Understand? I'm 62, Claire, living on a fixed income in a shoebox apartment so you could have that land. I stood outside your house with Lily's gift, calling you over and over, while you lied to my face. That's not tight finances. That's betrayal. The room went still. Claire's eyes dropped to her hands, twisting in her lap. Ethan stared at the floor, his usual confidence gone. I straightened, my voice firm. I'm not here to ruin your life, but I won't let you erase mine. If you want to move forward, you start with respect. Until then, the land stays locked. They left. Without another word, the door clicking shut behind them. I leaned against the counter, my hands shaking, not from anger but from the weight of finally saying what I'd held back for years. A few days after Claire and Ethan left my apartment, I drove to the land with Nora, the lawyer who'd become my anchor. The plot sat quiet under a gray sky, the old oak tree standing tall at its heart. I hadn't been here in years, but every inch held memories, my father walking me through the grass, pointing out where he'd plant roses for my mother. As Nora checked the boundary markers, I knelt by the oak, my fingers brushing the earth. My father's words echoed, "There's something special under it, Maggie. For you and your kids." I'd always thought he meant it metaphorically, a story to make the land feel alive. But that day, with the injunction filed and Claire's betrayal still raw, I needed to know. I borrowed a small shovel from Nora's car and dug, the dirt cold and heavy. A foot down, my blade hit something hard. My heart raced as I pulled out a rusted metal box, its edges worn but intact. Inside were letters in my father's slanted handwriting, a gold wedding ring, my mother's, I realized with a pang, and a hand-drawn map of our family's history, names and dates looping across the paper. I sat back, the letters trembling in my hands. They were to my mother, written before I was born, full of dreams about this land, a place for our family to gather, to stay connected through generations. He'd saved every dime to buy it, pouring his life into this patch of earth. I'd given it to Claire thinking she'd cherish it, but I'd never told her its story. Maybe that was my mistake, but it didn't excuse her secrecy, her lies. Tears stung my eyes, not just for the past but for what I almost lost. This wasn't just land, it was my father's heart, my family's roots. If Claire and Ethan had sold it, this box, these letters, would have been bulldozed into nothing. That night, I wrote Claire a letter, enclosing a copy of one of my father's notes. I told her about the box, the ring, the map, how this land wasn't just money, but a promise. I mailed it, not expecting a reply. She hadn't answered my call since our fight. Days later, Nora called. The court had approved the injunction. The land was frozen, safe from sale until a judge could review my case. I exhaled, relief mixing with resolve. Claire and Ethan could wait, but this box, this piece of my father, was mine to protect. For the first time, I saw my fight not just as standing up to them, but as standing for something bigger, the family I'd come from. And the one I still hoped to save. The court's ruling came on a quiet Tuesday, a single email that changed everything. The judge had upheld my injunction, freezing the sale of the land until a full hearing could decide its fate. Nora's voice crackled with pride over the phone. "You did it, Margaret. They can't touch that land without your signature." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the rusted box from the oak tree, my father's letters spread out like a map of my heart. For the first time in years, I felt solid, like I wasn't just a shadow in Claire's life. I'd spent so long giving money, time, pieces of myself, thinking it would keep us close. But standing up for that land, for my father's dream, showed me I'd given too much without asking for respect in return. I wasn't just fighting for dirt or dollars. I was fighting for me. That realization pushed me out of my apartment, out of the quiet I'd hidden in since Lily's birthday. A neighbor had mentioned a community art class at the local rec center, and on a whim, I signed up. The first day, I walked in nervous, my hands still smelling of paint from Lily's gift. But the room was warm, filled with women my age laughing over easels, trading tips on brushstrokes. I started painting again, not just for Lily, but for myself. One week, I sketched the oak tree from memory, its roots curling into the earth. Another, I painted a sunrise, all pinks and golds, like the hope I was starting to feel. The other, women noticed, slipping me compliments, inviting me for coffee after class. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed this connection, creation, a life beyond waiting for Claire's calls. Dorothy, my neighbor, stopped me one morning outside the grocery store, her eyes bright. "Margaret, people around here talk. We know what you've done for Claire and Ethan, all those years, all that money. And we know what they tried to pull with your land." She squeezed my arm. "You're not alone in this." Her words hit me hard, not because I needed the validation, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Claire broke her silence a week later with an email. It was short, almost formal, a small bank transfer, a few $1,000s, and a single line. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't realize." I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to call, to hear her voice, to believe she meant it. But I'd learned something. Apologies don't fix years of being pushed aside. I wrote back, calm but firm, "Let's talk in person, Claire. We need to set things straight." She didn't respond, but I didn't chase her. I was done begging for a place in her life. Instead, I met with Nora to plan the land's future. We decided to lease it to a local farmer, splitting the income with Claire but keeping my name on every decision. The steady checks gave me breathing room, a cushion I hadn't had in years. I started a journal, too, scribbling stories about my father, the land, the box, pages I'd give Lily someday, so she'd know where she came from. Each word felt like a step toward myself, toward a woman I'd almost forgotten, Margaret Sullivan, not just a mother, but a person with dreams of her own. I'm Claire Walsh, 34, a marketing manager who's supposed to have it all together, career, husband, daughter. But sitting here now, I feel like a kid caught in a lie, the kind I used to tell Mom when I snuck cookies before dinner. Growing up, it was just me and her, after Dad died in that crash. She was my rock, working nights as a nurse, always there. With a warm meal or a hug, asking about my day like it mattered more than hers. I swore I'd make her proud, pay her back for every sacrifice. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. When I met Ethan, everything felt like it clicked. He was ambitious, a banker with a plan for us. We got married, had Lily, and I took his last name, Walsh, thinking it marked a new start. But life got heavy fast, bills, a mortgage, Lily's needs. Mom gave us her father's land to help, and I was grateful, but Ethan saw it differently. "It's just sitting there, Claire," he'd say. "Sell it, and we're set for years." I pushed back at first. It was Mom's gift, her legacy. But Ethan's logic wore me down, and I let myself believe it was for Lily, for us. I didn't tell Mom about the sale because I knew she'd fight it. And I lied about Chicago because I couldn't face her at Lily's birthday, not with that secret hanging over me. I thought she'd never find out, that she'd stay quiet like always. Then her letter arrived, with a copy of Granddad's note from that box under the oak. Reading his words, his dreams for that land, for our family, hit me like a punch. I'd been ready to trade it all for a quick fix, not even knowing what I was giving up. I was ashamed. Not just for the land, but for how I'd treated her. She'd given me everything, money for our debts, hours with Lily, her own home, and I'd pushed her away, letting Ethan's need for control shape our family. I sent her money, a small piece of what we owed, and an apology, but it felt hollow. She asked to talk in person, and I froze. What could I say to fix years of taking her for granted? I started small. I let Lily call her, watching my daughter's face light up as she showed Mom her drawings over video. I saw Mom's smile, softer than I deserved, and it broke something in me. Ethan still thinks we can salvage the land deal, but I'm done. I told him we need to make this right, starting with respect. I'm planning to meet Mom soon, to say what I should have said years ago. I'm sorry, and I want to learn how to be her daughter again, even if it takes time. Spring came to Philadelphia like a quiet promise, the air soft with new warmth. I'd moved into a senior-friendly community on the city's west side, a small apartment with a wide window overlooking a park. The first thing I did was set my mother's gold ring from the oak tree box on a shelf, next to a framed watercolor Lily had painted, a wobbly sunflower, bright as her smile. Every morning, I'd catch the light glinting off that ring, a reminder of where I'd come from and what I'd fought for. The land was safe now, leased to a farmer who grew lavender and corn. The rent checks came steady, split evenly with Claire, but I held the reins. Every decision needed my signature. It wasn't about control, it was about respect, something I'd finally learned to demand. Claire hadn't fought it. After her email, we met once, over coffee in a crowded cafe. She apologized, her eyes down, voice shaky. I didn't see you, Mom. Not really. I listened, nodded, but didn't rush to forgive. Healing, I'd learned, isn't a race. It's a slow, deliberate step toward yourself. Lily became my anchor. Claire let her call more, and soon, video chats turned into visits. One Saturday, Lily ran into my apartment, clutching a new drawing. "Grandma artist, look. It's us at the park." I hugged her tight, her warmth filling the holes Claire's distance had left. I didn't push for more from Claire or Ethan. If they wanted to rebuild, they'd need to meet me halfway, not as a bank or a babysitter, but as Margaret Sullivan, a woman with her own life. That life was blooming. I joined an art collective, a group of locals who painted and showed their work at community fairs. My first piece was the oak tree, its roots deep, the sky above it gold. At the exhibit, I pinned a note beside it, sharing my father's story, his letters, his dream of family. Strangers stopped to read, some with tears in their eyes, and I realized I wasn't just painting for me. I was telling a story that mattered. The extra income from the land let me plan a trip, a small one, to the coast, something I'd never done because I'd always put Claire first. I started a journal for Lily, too, filling it with stories about her great-grandfather, the land, the ring. Someday, she'd read it and know she came from people who loved fiercely, even through mistakes. One evening, I stood on my balcony, watching a tiny sprout push through the soil of a potted basil plant I'd started. It was fragile but stubborn, like me. I'd spent years believing being a mother meant giving everything, disappearing into someone else's needs. But now, at 62, I knew better. I was a mother, yes, but I was also Margaret, artist, daughter, woman with dreams that didn't end with Claire's choices. The sprout swayed in the breeze, and I smiled. It wasn't loud or dramatic, this new beginning. It was quiet, steady, mine.